Hi book lovers, and welcome or welcome back to a new video. In this one I'm giving you 10 amazing small town romances because it's fall, which means it is Gilmore Girls season, and Gilmore Girls season equals to small towns. I think that is pretty logical, and also to me small town romances are most of the time like more fall themed, even though there are a lot that, you know, play in summer. And I had that in mind for this specific video, so I actually only curated books on this list that give more the Gilmore Girls and more like the fall vibes than some others. Technically there are a bit more than 10 on this list because some of them are actually series, but I think I did a great job curating this list. There are some hidden gems, there are some that might be a bit more obvious, but I just couldn't not put them on this specific small town book recommendation list. And I mean, please grab a cup of coffee or tea or matcha if that's your drink of choice. I actually do have water in my cup. But I had to embrace the like small town vibes, and especially thinking about Gilmore Girls and like the big cups, I have to drink it out of a mug. It is pretty hot where I am and you need to stay hydrated. So cheers guys. And let's start with the book recommendations. Okay, the first one is an obvious one, but I had to start with this one because the author even says that this small town romance series is inspired by Gilmore Girls, and that is none other than the When in Rome series by Sarah Adams. This series took me really by surprise because I actually read Sarah Adams' books before this one and I really didn't like them. They were just not for me. She writes more sweet romances. They're all closed doors, and I like myself some spice. So I actually thought that I was done with Sarah Adams, but I hear a lot of good things about this one and I gave her a second chance. It's actually one of my first reading vlogs on this channel and I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I would, and especially continuing with this series. I have them up here. The second one, Practice Makes Perfect, is actually one of, I think, my favorite books now. I would love to reread this at some point. I'm so happy I was wrong because this particular series is so charming and just so adorable, and you can definitely tell that it is inspired by Gilmore Girls Small Town because you get those vibes in here. Especially I think in this one and maybe even the third one, you get the like gossiping town members, and you know, everyone's watching out for everyone and they're very of new people coming in, and I don't know, it's just so adorable. In the first one we meet Noah, which is the only brother of the siblings we follow, so the other three books, the third one coming out next Jan of February I think, are about his sisters. And Noah is actually a baker who has the pie shop in this town, and Emilia is actually a singer, kind of looks for a sanctuary and just a place where she can decompose and just basically detox from a very toxic environment that she finds herself in as a singer. And she comes to Rome because it's basically the next best thing to the actual Rome in Italy. So this place in Rome, Kentucky, and she's a huge Audrey Hepburn fan, so she kind of goes there because of the movie Holiday Rome, and that's how she finds herself with her broken down car in front of Noah's place, and he basically lets her in because he's a gentleman. It's definitely Grumpy Sunshine romance, and as I said, if you continue with the series, you have Practice Makes Perfect, and I'm going to show you the third one as well, Beg, Borrow, or Steal, which was this year's release. All three of them I really enjoyed, and especially for the small town and the Gilmore Girl vibes, I 100% recommend this series, and I can't wait for the fourth one to come out next year. But at the same time, I'm also honestly so sad to say goodbye to this small town. I really enjoyed my time in here. Next up, we seriously have a small town because really only, I think, a dozen people live there, and that is in The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I love this book so much. It is definitely one of my absolute favorites, and any chance I get I will basically recommend this book. But especially when it comes to small town, like you have to pick this one up because this place in the wilderness of Alaska, and definitely very remote, definitely at a place where not a lot of people live in. And this is the first one. You can read this by itself, but definitely the story continues in the second book, and I would highly suggest reading both of them because it just it is so good. And this is also so much more than just a romance. We have our main character Kala, who is estranged with her father. She doesn't really have contact with him, and then a friend of her father actually reaches out and says, hey, don't you want to spend a few weeks with your dad and come to Alaska? And she is unsure whether to do it or not, but she does end up going, and then she meets the very grumpy bush pilot Jonah, who is not a fan of her and she's not a fan of him, and you do have like an enemies to lovers situation in here. But as I said, this is also about so much more about her relationship with her dad and how this unfolds, and also honestly living so remote, and it just it is so good. Like, please pick this one up if you haven't already. I know this has been around for quite a while, but it's just like, this really has my heart, I think, because the people in here are definitely not perfect, but that's what always intrigues me, because I don't really like picture perfect situations. I would say that this like small town feeling though is like, it is so cozy, and even though this plays technically in summer, I never envision this in summer. Maybe because it is Alaska and it is like cozy and small town, that I always see this more as like a fall and wintry. But yeah, 100%, if you want like super small town vibes, I would really recommend this romance. The next book also just like sprang at me when I thought about this specific video, because this really gives me like Gilmore Girl small town vibes, and that is The Bookshop of Possibilities by Andrea J. Severson. I read this not too long ago, and this is also the start of a interconnected series, so this is the first one, and I love diving into this because with our main character, which is Catherine, you basically arrive in this small town and you get to know everyone, which is a great introduction to this interconnected series. And I think what also really reminded me of Gilmore Girls is that everyone has like their independent, you know, businesses and like little shops, and they work together, and it just, I don't know, it is so charming. I think that is the best way to describe this. This is not as romance heavy, so if you're someone who's looking more for like romance fiction with a romance subplot, then I would highly suggest this. And I'm also definitely going to pick up the next book in the series. You can read them in any order because you follow different couples, but I prefer to read in order, and this also is just a great introduction to get to know this small town. And you know, I can picture this just perfectly. And actually our male main character owns his own coffee shop, and he's like very coffee enthusiastic and gives her coffee all the time because they're also neighbors. By the way, she comes into town because her grandma passes away and she inherits the bookshop there. She doesn't really know what she wants to do with it, but she wants to try and, you know, see where it's going. And it just, yeah, it is so nice seeing how the whole town basically helps her and how they all grow close, and you see like friendships unfolding. If this sounds like something you would enjoy for your cozy fall read, I definitely recommend this book series. The next book I don't have physically with me, but it's also one of my favorite books, like of all time, actually favorite book series, and that is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Abby Jimenez is just such a queen when it comes to romances. Honestly, all her books, even the ones that I didn't love as much, are just amazing romances, and so is Part of Your World. It's actually the first book that I've read by her, and immediately I fell in love with her writing, with her characters, and just her story. And in Part of Your World you have the opposites attract trope, where she's from a big city and she has a one-night stand with this guy from the small town she, you know, just drives through, and is actually, I think, like an hour or two away from the city where she lives. But this one-night stand, she just can't get out of her head, and while her world basically falls apart because she has a very shitty ex, or like soon ex-husband, and her parents also put a lot of pressure on her and her career because she's a doctor at this hospital that basically her like family not started, but they all have like a great legacy there that she needs to fulfill. And whenever that's too much, she basically runs away and runs into the open arms of Daniel, and he is just so amazing with her. Like, one of my like favorite microtropes, for I don't even know what reason, is when he's younger than her, just slightly. It doesn't have to be like a huge age gap, but I feel like the younger guys just often give like so much puppy love, and I don't know, just their energy and how they want to pursue the female main character is just so good. And Part of Your World is just amazing because you do get the whole like small town charming vibe, but it is also so much more. Like, Abby Jimenez romances are very layered. They are also very deep. I think I cried at all her books actually. And then after that one, Go Into Yours Truly and Only for the Summer, I think is the last one, if I'm correct. I'm sure you won't regret reading those romances. The next up, I have a book series that I feel like definitely deserves more hype, and that is the Queen's Cove series by Stephanie Archer. I've got all 4 books here. Again, I would just recommend starting with the first one, but I wanted to show you the whole series because I think, especially when you have a small town setting, having an interconnected series is just so enjoyable because you know a lot of the side characters that are just part of this like charming community that you feel like so connected throughout the whole series. But let's start with the first one, that is That Kind of Guy, and this is actually like a fake engagement, fake marriage kind of situation, which is definitely why I even picked this one up years ago, because I love myself a fake engagement or marriage of convenience kind of situation. And that's actually how I discovered Stephanie Archer, because I feel like that her Vancouver Storm series is much more popular and it deserves it, but this one is equally good. And especially if you want the small town charm, I would highly suggest this. I also actually think that we're going to return to this setting, because you will see when you read this, there are other stories that could definitely be told, but we're actually following 4 brothers in this series, and there's this other guy that isn't a brother. But I actually went and asked her on Instagram whether he will get a book, and she said yes, eventually he will. So I'm so glad that at some point we will return to this small town, because it is just so charming. And in this one, I think we're following the oldest brother, which is Emmett Rhodes, and he wants to run for mayor for the small town because he really likes his hometown, but at the same time he kind of comes off like the arrogant guy and the guy that only focuses on businesses, and that's not really how you charm your small town and how you win your voters in a small town. So what he needs, he thinks, is to portray more of like the family guy, you know, the whole wholesome brand that he doesn't really have. So he asks Avery to play his fake fiance, and in return he would help her secure the restaurant she is running. It is definitely a beneficial situation for both, but they're not necessarily happy that they're in it. And I really enjoyed this one. And if you're looking for a small town romance series that also has some great spice, then highly recommend this one by Stephanie Archer. Then I feel like you can't really make a small town romance recommendation without mentioning Elsie Silver. Like, she definitely is a small town queen, and I feel like that her small town romances are often more suiting for the summer, because it's more like the country cowboy kind of romance. And not that there's anything wrong with picking up cowboy or country romances for the fall season, but for the Gilmore Girls theme, I actually went with her latest series, which is the Rose Hill series, and the 4th and final book just came out. So now's your time to binge this book series. And usually I would obviously say start with the first one, and I would still suggest it because a lot of people enjoyed Wild Love a lot. I'm probably the only person who didn't really enjoy this book, and that's okay. I would still recommend it because I know a lot of other people enjoyed this, but I actually enjoyed Wild Eyes and Wild Side a lot more. And what is special about this book series is that all these guys are single dads, and they are dads in very different ways, which I really appreciated about this book series. And they also have something they call, I can't remember, like the Single Dads Bowling Club, and they meet each week for a bowling session, and they all have to be dads to be part of the team, which I think is also really cute and charming in this little small town. This is still like, you know, giving like the country vibes, but it's not as cowboy themed as, for example, her Chestnut Spring series, which I also love. For this video, I want to recommend this book series especially. Another queen when it comes to small town romances, I believe, is Ashley Herring Blake. All her books are set in small towns and they are all very charming, but I chose Delilah Green Doesn't Care for my book recommendation for this list. Not only is it one of my favorites by her, but I feel like this is kind of giving when Jess entered Gilmore Girls, because I feel like Delilah Green is our Jess, and I have so much love for her and for her book. It's definitely opposites attract, and you also have single mom because Claire is a single mom and she is much more sweet, where Delilah is more of a black cat. And what I also really like about Ashley Herring Blake's writing is it is spicy, but it's also about complicated characters, and there's usually a lot of character growth and development, and you just get so much more layers to these characters. And Delilah Green Doesn't Care is also the first book in the Bride's Fall series, which all 3 books play in the small town, and I would recommend the entire series after reading the first one. Next up, I have In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is also part of an interconnected standalone series. I enjoyed this one, I think, a bit more than the first one, which is Love Light Farms, and this also always looks super Christmas themed, and I would say is perfect for the Christmas time. So for this list, I wanted to recommend In the Weeds. The other book in the series is Mixed Signals. I haven't read that one yet. However, I think if I would have probably hold that one up in my hands right now, because it is about a baker and it just gives even more cozy vibes. But this one is also cozy, and it plays in a really charming small town, so that is the vibe we're going for these recommendations. You do have Grumpy Sunshine in here as well, and it kind of gives like Luke and Lorelai vibes. He's very reluctant and very standoffish and, you know, like doing his own thing. And Evelyn, our main character here, is very outgoing. She is actually an influencer, which he didn't know when he met her for the first time in a different town and they had a little thing. Now she's back because she also just needs a break, and to regain inspiration she goes into the small town just to, you know, take a break, and that's where they meet again. Alright, I've got 2 more recommendations. One technically book series and one standalone. For the book series, I'm actually going to talk about the third one. They're all interconnected standalones, so you can read them out of order. I actually did. I would say if you plan to read them all, I would definitely go in order. But my favorite out of that series that I want to recommend is Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey, and I think it is probably my favorite Tessa Bailey book. It is just very me in a book. I love our characters. I love the struggle. I just love an ice queen where the guy just really has to break through the very high walls to get to the inner part, and this book just... I've read it several times actually, and again, if I have a chance to talk about it, then I will, and it's definitely a charming small town setting. I feel like there's one scene in particular that I'm thinking about, but I can't remember what book it plays in. But what I also like about this particular series is the friendships, and I think the women from the first and third book are also sisters, and I just love how they try to support each other, or just generally try to find their way in this small town, because I feel like that's also often a topic that everyone knows you from when you're a child, and you just, you know, want to maybe branch out from that image that everyone has from you, but maybe you've outgrown it, or it's just not you anymore. And I love that theme in these books as well, but especially the third one, as I said, is just my perfect romance, and it might not be perfect for everyone, but I just had to throw it out there. And totally the opposite from the first book that I recommended, where there is basically no spice in the When in Rome series. You know Tessa Bailey, and Tessa Bailey writes some incredible spice. So if you want small town romance with some extra spice, because some of these others were also spicy, but the Tessa Bailey books, they're just on another level, I would say, when it comes to contemporary romances. And fun fact, in Tools of Engagements, he's also actually younger than her, and we kind of have a single dad situation as well, because he becomes the guardian of his niece, and also that whole storyline is so heart-wrenching and just wholesome and warm, and I really love that book. So again, recommending the book, but also the entire book series. And then for my last one, I went a different road, and it's not really just a contemporary romance, because it has magical realism, and that is a novel love story by Ashley Poston. Ashley Poston is known for her magical realism, and this particular book I chose not because it's my favorite, but because this is what we all want during this cozy season, to actually step into our small town romances and live there, basically. Because that's exactly what happens to our main character in here. She drives, and all of a sudden she finds herself in one of her favorite small town romances from her books, and she doesn't really mind at the beginning, because I mean, come on, this sounds like the best situation ever. But things get difficult when she really connects with, I think, the bookshop owner, and at some point when you have real feelings, you also have to maybe talk about actual reality and getting back to it. This also deals with some heavier topics, but it's still quite light, and as I said, just really cozy, and that's why I wanted to put this on this list as well. And if you want more than just contemporary romance and small town, and want some magical element thrown in here, then I would highly suggest putting a novel love story onto your TBR. So with that, we have my curated romance recommendations for the trope small town, especially when it comes to, you know, Gilmore Girls vibes and just like fall season, because again, there are also a lot of small town romances that I would recommend that I feel like are not as fitting for this particular season, so that's maybe for another video. But I hope that you could take away some of these recommendations. Let me know if you've read any of these, let me know which ones are going onto your TBR, and if you have some more to add, then also please let us all know in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you had a lovely time hanging out with me, drinking your coffee, matcha or tea, whatever it is. I mean, for me it was water. Maybe comment down below your drink of choice. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, and also subscribe for more bookish content in the future, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!